Javas Bigambo is many things. He's a lawyer, he is a governance expert, and he'll tell us what that means. He's also a political communications and strategy expert or strategist, and he'll also tell us what that means. Javas, welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you so much, Latif.
Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Pleased to be here.
Let's start with the first one. What is a governance expert?
Well, basically, we in the realm of governance and the extent to which one has sunk their teeth in the flesh of matters governance, then to that extent, of course, there is no qualification for expertise. No, but there's no qualification. There's no award. There's no university that awards expertise.
So all these fellows who claim to be governance as experts.
No, basically, it's a question of your studies and experience that bestows expertise upon you.
According to you.
So there is no subject matter which has units that you can study so that you can understand governance.
You see,
There is.
There's no course unit for expertise in
there is
governance.
there's no
certificate
for expertise, but there are courses for governance.
But when you have consumed the courses, then can one not claim, therefore, that you have
Self-acclaimed.
But
some?
you see, Doc, there are people who've sat in classrooms, studied various courses,
Yeah.
but have not practiced. Would they
Are
become
they
experts?
experts?
At studying, yes.
Does expertise have to have some level of
The
practice?
practice elements
Well,
then
the
has
practice
to be.
element is very significant, very
Okay.
important.
Okay.
But we know very well that, of course, qualification or studying is very important. But you see also there are various levels of practice. Academics, for example, they practice it through the lecture halls and maybe research. So that to that extent, by way of
practice.
lecturing and research, they become experts by way of the experience. Yes.
And where is your expertise now drawn from? Have
You
you been a
see-
governor?
Of the central
Or
bank.
have you advised one or two?
Well,
Or have
interestingly,
you taught a governor?
Well, interestingly, I have and remain a major advisor to various governors and county governments, a leading strategist to various political entities and politicians.
And how have they fared as a result of
There is
your...
no client of mine who's ever failed election.
No. That's not what I asked. I asked, how have they fared in the practice of their governance?
Now,
Not whether
yes.
they've been elected.
Yes. Now, interestingly, when it comes to advisory services, it is imperative that clients take up the advice that's given. But you see, the latitude that you have as an advisor is the extent of offering the advice. The utility of that advice, actually, it's upon them. It's them to see whether or the extent to which they want to embrace the advice or not. You cannot compel a client to
That's
take up
like
and
saying,
execute
Jarvis,
advice.
that a chef, a cordon bleu chef, has created the perfect meal and you set it before your client. Whether they eat it or not is completely up to them.
It's up to the client,
You've
yes.
done the perfect job.
Yes.
So then what is the measure
But
of
if
your
they
success?
eat and they glow and then they put on some weight and all, then
But
say
that is
success.
what I am asking.
the
That is
measure of
what I
success.
am asking.
Yes.
What is the measure of success?
They
What
don't-
is it
They
now?
don't lose elections.
No, but you see, elections and governance
Are different.
are
Different,
different
yeah.
things. But you see, then, when a client depends upon your advisory services, and you see the extent to which their frameworks of execution in office leads them to comply, for example, with matters policy, statutory, and constitutional, then you'd say actually you are successful or succeeding,
Okay.
at least to that good extent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you retained by some of these clients of yours, those who are serving in public office? Do you have a formal public appointment, or are you retained by the individual at an individual level?
Well, you see, when it comes to such kind of service, there is the retainer that comes to them as individuals, then the county governments that retain also our services.
Right.
But you see, county governments cannot retain the services of an individual. Then they retain the services of your company. Yes.
Why can't they retain the service of an individual?
But you see, when it comes to public procurement and disposal act, for example, can a county government or even a national government procure the services of an individual? Yes, they can, but it will bring various challenges. All right? It's easy, and in terms of even practice, for example, if you're a lawyer, it's easy to retain your services through your law firm than you as an individual lawyer, right? Because also of the scale, extent of services that they may want to have you offer through, say, your
And
company.
you're saying that if it's an individual,
An individual can retain you.
Yes.
For example, somebody may retain you if it's a senator or a governor at the individual level, which may not necessarily require or relate to the official services of their office. If they're retaining your company, for example, it's a question of retaining your services for purposes of the executive mandate.
I'll explain to you why I'm asking this question. I've seen with the presidency, and I've also seen with the governors, where people are retained as advisors. You're never really sure.
But you see, remember that
Sure of what? Of the retention?
The range of services that these advisory
advice.
services encompass, but they're retained as advisors.
There's always something accompanying that.
Yes,
Legal
there is.
advisor.
You know, when I say you're not certain,
Political advisor.
Okay.
You know,
you just mention
legal
any
advisor.
discipline, and then I'll ask you, okay, so what's the range?
legal advice.
Yeah, what's the range?
See everything. How to
now you see,
commit an illegality to how to avoid.
you know, of course, they always say that the custom is always right. In the end, of course, even say in the office of the president, he's got a slate of advisors.
Yes.
All right. And it has never come to the public the scope of particular advisory services rendered by such persons,
Yes.
or even to gauge
Yes.
their delivery. For example, if it's a question of performance-based delivery, even for, say, somebody like a consultant, it has never been known to us that advisor source of the office of the president
Does this.
does this. The terms of engagement or service have never really come to the fore for the consumption of the public.
You see, President Museveni of Uganda takes the cup when he comes to
Indeed.
this. Yes, because at the last count, I don't know how many were there. There were 140, 141 advisors. Now,
Yes.
yes,
It was
But yes,
138.
no, it's true.
138
but
December
it's
2021.
a growth industry.
Yes, but you see, it's really ridiculous, huh? Because some of those, and at such level, for example, the example that you've just cited, they just want to impress or to take care of some of their friends.
And what is wrong with that?
Well,
But do they offer advice?
but you see, there is something that we can argue is wrong.
Okay.
One, we're not quite certain whether the advisory services indicated are actually sought or given or rendered. Secondly, if at all these advisors are paid by the exchequer, paid from the public coffers, then actually that office should account for such services, should indicate. But do the public come out to demand for that accountability? It is important. You may not find that in certain progressive democracies where individuals are quite vigilant on various offices. Of course, if somebody is a foreign policy advisor, we will not have such office populated by 28 or 60 foreign policy advisors. Actually, you don't need even that number.
Okay.
But
Yes.
but just same way you've said, even in the other areas there are those. We have a national security advisor, foreign policy advisor. You think national security? You think Condoleezza Rice was
We
working alone?
even have
No, but you see-
Africa.
Yes,
Affairs.
advisor.
Africa
But you see,
advisor.
but you see,
So what's wrong with one president in Africa having such advisors? I have an advisor on Karamoja affairs. I have an advisor on the other tribe. Because I want to understand what is it that this community is feeling. What is it that
But
this
you see,
community
really-
wants? And I want to understand them, their nuances, what they are going through on a daily basis, so that when I, as head of state and government, I am coming up with policies and implementing government
I mean,
projects.
well-informed.
I'm well informed.
but you see, do you need to retain such an advisor for 5 years for our community issues?
Yes.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
He's
Why
a
not?
community.
But now,
When the community has gone.
But no, it's going to be there. But say 140 plus advisors for what?
Yes.
Now, for me, for example,
64 tribes. The other
now for me, for instance, I've studied law, I've studied political science, I've studied communication.
all right.
If you get me, then
You're a one-stop shop.
you got lots of other services that come with it. All right. But you see, if you get someone that advises you on, for example, for the case of Kenya, advisor on Kikuyu affairs, another advisor on Kamba
Luhya
affairs.
There, you've got to the heart of the matter. That's precisely what you need.
Scope. Javas.
And
All
that
right.
is why, Javas, maybe we actually need to look at it from that angle.
Yes.
Let's not look at it from this academic Western concept
Yes.
of, it's academic papers that you bring in because you're a lawyer, so then you can advise me on matters of law. And because you've studied political science, you can then also, I can retain you to advise. There are also these other things in politics.
Is there value for money?
Yes.
When a president,
Harmony, peace, tranquility, nothing is equitable to
And a
that.
feeling of inclusivity.
Yes.
and that's why I said, for example, there are certain fellows here, even here in Kenya, who've run for political office, served as members of parliament. Then in subsequent elections, they've lost. And then they are picked up as advisors, say, in the office of the president, in their numbers. It has never been known what they have actually delivered. When they speak, many times, you see them defending maybe government policy, but they don't speak to the subject matter for which they are retained. Then you wonder, actually, are they really advisors as the public has been told?
They may not speak to the public, but the appointing officer, maybe
Yes.
they speak. And that's why they were appointed. And having been appointed and having served their purpose, the other national purpose is for them to sing to this particular tune that the appointing officer wants them to sing to.
And also they're bound by, if I give you advice and you're implementing it, if I'm going out to the public, I've got to defend the advice that I gave you.
Well,
You have a
see,
duty, even
trouble
you,
is that-
when you are retained in your professional capacity and you've offered your advice and you're still maintaining that relationship. It means that whether the person who appointed you has taken your advice or not,
Yes.
you are still there, you're still earning. You've got to defend whatever they're doing.
Exactly. But now, what about in circumstances where you are this professional rendering this kind of advisory services, and then say your client, in times of the eyes of the public, is not seen to be actually complying with with the matter that, for example, you render your services. If you're an advisor on graft issues,
Yes.
and accountability,
Yes.
and then your client actually is cited in every corruption case,
You quit.
would you come out to defend your,
Yes, you do two things. You come out to defend them because you still believe in the advice that you gave them. It
Yes.
doesn't matter whether it landed him in trouble.
Exactly.
And if you think that they're not following your advice, quit. We have seen it. John Gedongo, quit.
Conscientiously so.
Yes.
Yes.
Abdikadir Mohammed, quit.
Exactly. But you see here, we populate offices or advisory offices with court poets. And they actually they're not even known to be experts in those subject matters.
Are you saying that court poets do not have any role to play in governance?
Court poets serve a very important role. One, they're political impresarios. We know for a fact. Secondly, we know that they massage the ego of the appointing authority. And thirdly, they help maybe to assuage the pain and agony from other political quarters that the appointing authority has.
You know, the focus seems to be on this technical competence that people bring into the political realm.
Yes.
It is absolutely necessary because technical input is usually informed.
Yes.
But then, if we look at our politics in this country, what is it that holds sway? The academic perspective of the technicalities involved in our politics, or is it the native charm and the native sway and the basic fundamental cultural understandings that people in regions have that actually hold sway when it comes to the process of actually electing leaders?
I would argue that we need a nexus between the two, that interlink between the theoretical aspect, academic aspect, and the practice. Very important, because if it's left to the quarters of matters academy alone, then there could be some limitations suffered when it comes to real experiential issues that one needs to have or depth to offer services, for example, if advisory, etc. But here, if we look at the history of Kenya and the secured place of court poets, would we say that we would prefer to have court poets in their numbers for the roles that they have served in the past? Look at all the successive regimes since independence. would we say that
Give us examples.
Of these code points, I was waiting of the people he defines as code
One or
points.
two case studies here where we can actually look and say, okay, so for this person, this is what they were doing, and
And clearly you're polite because the people you're calling code points, people have called code jesters.
Yes.
Yes.
yes,
So,
and joy bringers.
okay, now, give us an example.
Even better. Okay.
It does better.
Yeah.
The political joy bringers.
Yes.
Now you see, we know that there are individuals in the political space, some of them even politicians, of course, who see no evil, detect no evil, cannot appreciate any evil that the leader whom they so much adore has committed or commits, or the party or to which they belong. That they simply, thoroughly and properly hero worship, sing, and even would kiss the ground upon which their leader walks. We just heard on the floor of Parliament, just most recently, a leader within the ODM saying that sisi ni ng'ombe za baba,
yeah.
which means that you are willing to be milked dry. Yeah, which means that you're not willing to use, the brain and brawn or content between your ears to the extent that you think your objectivity serves. You just want to impress the person whom you think
Are
you're
you
serving.
suggesting that cows don't think?
Well, actually, I have not come to a point where I have arrived at a conclusion that cows have got a capacity to think. But I think they are led by some senses, but not thinking the manner in which human beings do.
So says the human being.
Yeah.
It's a question that cows would be best placed to answer.
Yeah.
And in this case, if someone is a declared cow, okay, do cows think when they go to drink water? Do they think when they eat, when they are in pasture? Do they think when they go about their daily activities? I dare say they do.
I would say that they're led by instincts and yearnings. After feeding on grass, right, for so long, or licking salt,
They instinctively know what to do.
led by
According
thirst.
to you,
They
right.
led by thirst.
And how different are we as human beings?
Well, okay. Would we say that? Well, I've never been one, but
Well,
do they have conversations?
They do.
They do. They
Yeah,
communicate.
They do.
They communicate.
Even trees have conversation.
They communicate. Yeah, but what I'm asking is this: do they have a conversation in the manner that we would construe as such? as human
Why
beings?
do we need to judge it from our perspective? I mean, if they communicate and they understand each other, do they ask us where?
It's like judging a fish
Don't
by
you
its
see
ability to
outcomes?
climb a tree. You are talking about one which operates in one way, because if we're likening it to what you've almost described as the psychophancy around a leader, they act in a certain way because of a certain thing. Now, if you're not one of them, it would then be difficult to understand why they operate that way. But because you're looking at it from the periphery, then you would say to yourself, well, I really wouldn't do that. Until and unless you get into that position, you then are not able to understand why they do.
Now, you see, there are times when we've listened to leaders and they say that when I was on the other side, yeah, I felt my hands were tied because of the interest that I had to serve.
Yes.
Serving interests.
Yes.
Those interests may not be thought of as public interest to a great extent, or serving the greater good of the nation, but the greater good of the particular leader,
Yes.
to whom I think they owe loyalty and maybe even their positions. So which means to them, they are not driven by the desire and object to serve the greater good of the
You're
people.
always bound by that, no matter what. Okay.
Interest drives everything.
I work at the Standard Media Group,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
There are certain things that the Standard Media Group may do that I feel, come on, I mean, we have to take that direction. But I don't have to stand up every day and say, no, this one is wrong. No, this one is wrong. No.
Well,
Same thing. You are retained by a certain, let's say, governor or political leader. Okay.
Entity.
Entity. You are advising them on this, and the other. And then there are mistakes that are made in the same sphere of your advice. You don't have to come out all the time and saying, no, 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 no. You tell them privately.
Exactly.
But
You raise,
publicly, you will not come out to castigate them. It's the same thing that we see with the so-called sycophants.
yes.
it doesn't mean that the cow does not go to Baba and tell Baba, Baba, this direction. No, absolutely no.
Says Baba, move.
Now, the Baba may listen to the cow.
Yes.
Or Baba may choose not to listen to the cow.
Yes.
But you see, in the end, the cow cannot come out here and tell us,
You know what Baba
this
said
Baba
yesterday?
likes goat milk. No.
And we're here being milked.
But in the end, the cow knows that it's not equal with the owner.
Of
right?
course. Don't you?
Of course.
Does
But
Jefferson
you know-
Bigambo not know that he's not equal to the
Person he's
employer?
advising.
You know when I talk about politics, if there is an enterprise, I'm calling it an enterprise that accommodates everyone on every sphere and diversity, it is politics. And as to which roles are more important or lesser than the other, that is a subject of continuing debate. But a role is played. For instance, the example I gave, if you look at, say, Uganda and the advisors, many of them are ex-military men.
Yes.
How do you transform someone who has spent a greater part of their growing life in the bush into ordinary civilian life? Where will they fit in? And they're ex-military men. Where do they fit in? And you know very well they supported your cause. What do you do?
And that's why I said earlier that the purpose of them being placed or given such appointments is not particularly to serve the subject matter for which it is purported that they are retained.
And I'm saying actually they do.
You see, they're just being, shepherded,
Corralled.
yes, so that their idleness should not lead to a larger problem for the leader.
Now you tell me, have you not just described a purpose for which they're appointed? And a very important purpose.
No, you see,
Yes.
but the thing is this. Then why don't they just say that the state is going to retain this? Of course I know. Of course I get your point. But let's face it. Are we not then stealing from the public
No.
when it's
They're
done
not.
as such?
Did they not serve a purpose for the public for which now you could argue they're being rewarded?
Let's face it. They, for example, in the case of Uganda, served as military men and, say, women. And having served the state and the leader, and they have retired. To the extent that maybe their services are desired, related to what they were rendering or offering earlier, it is important.
Call it a pension plan if you wish.
Yes. But what about calling them, for example, an ex-military man who's never had any serious diplomatic experience or foreign policy, and then you retain them as foreign policy advisors or international advisors to the president?
It's very important.
I mean, really.
You know as
For the
well
sake of titling,
as,
perhaps.
as well as I do that political appointments, by their very nature, are always multifaceted.
Sure.
Now, the real work in any government ministry anywhere on this planet is usually not done by the politicians at the top.
True.
So it doesn't matter who you appoint. Okay? There are people who will ensure that that particular ministry functions the way it should be. And they've been there for a long time and they understand the ropes. They understand the where-to-fors, and that ministry will function as it
But
should.
would we be at a better place under the sun, if at all, even though technocrats and bureaucrats are there to handle various tasks, but even the persons occupying those offices also have got serious understanding of the job for which they have been appointed? I think would be at a better place.
No, not necessarily.
Really?
Not necessarily.
In some cases, I think it would be good if, for example, the way you're saying, that person who really, really understands the system, once they retire, if they're made chief administrative secretary, it would be good. Because they'd come back and advise and tell the president, no, you know,
And they bring
this
some
one,
experience.
if you want,
there's
if you
that
want
word again,
efficiency in
expertise
this
to the
one,
table.
What I'm arguing against is the absolutism
okay.
that is actually being presented, that they would, and I'm saying not necessarily. They could.
It would
They
be
might.
advantageous.
Now, let's
Yes.
give real examples even in our own country. Present head of public service, Honorable Kinyo, or retired Francis Muzaura, ambassador, because of their depth and wealth of experience, even upon retirement, and you tell them or you have them as advisors to your office, you see that's desirable because of the work they were doing, still in the same line. All right? In the same line. But now imagine, for example,
Having Julius Karangi in NSSF, that's not the same line.
but you see, actually, let's face it, they are being kept busy in those offices. But would you tell me that having served in the previous capacity, he is competent enough
Yes.
to advise, to lead, to guide
All right.
that
Yes.
institution.
I'm going to give another
Yes.
example. You have General Kibwana and the
Yes.
port. Explain that one.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Huh?
Yes,
They're-
they do.
That's what I'm saying. They are
But-
just being.
You see, as a general, he's
Yes.
not just thinking war. He is managing an institution.
Yes. And this
Now,
general,
He
by the
has
time they,
shepherded an institution.
Yes.
If you are general and head of the military, surely you can chair a board of.
you can chair any board.
Yes.
That is all right. But in terms of the imperatives of corporate governance, would you tell me that he's well placed?
Yes, I would.
to chair the board. Yes,
Yes, I would.
If
You
you,
know
told
why?
me, if you
When-
told me
when-
he's the chair of the audit committee, then I would ask you, aye, surely.
But even then, I would still give that blank state. You know why?
Yeah.
There's a misunderstanding that when people are in the military, all they know is how to hold a gun and how to shoot
fight.
it, okay? Or how to back orders, or how to receive those backed orders, okay? No. The military in this country are some of the most educated people, and the diversity of education that you spread among the military is actually profound. The training and understanding that they go through. So these things that we talk about, as though they understand it just as well as we do. They understand logistics, then everything. So
And they have also gone through training on governance.
yes, they have. And then they have something that most civilians don't have. It's called discipline.
Yeah. Let's take a
Discipline,
break.
that's true.
Let's take a
Yes.
break, though. We'll continue the conversation. We're talking about the role of advisors and consultants in governance. With us in the studio is governance expert Javas Bigambo, who is also a lawyer. He's also a political communication strategist. We have this guy who is a Javas. He's advisor, he's strategist, strategizing during the campaigns, works with the presidential candidate. When the president gets into office, what does the advisor become? Chief of staff, right?
Not necessarily.
In some cases, right? Chief of staff. And then they continue now running that office. In this country, we see various governors have advisors. There's a political advisor to the governor. There's whatever.
Education advisor. Just look at the number of ministries. There'll be advisors.
There'll be an
that are
advisor
equal to the
somewhere.
number of those ministries.
Yes.
Yes.
And if you look at their background, they could have an understanding.
They tend to have a background even in the
in
subject
the
matter of that
subject
ministry.
matter.
Yes.
But they were also involved in the campaign and the bringing to office of this particular governor. So they have a role that they're playing. We understand what we were thinking about when we were campaigning for office, and we're here just to make sure that this is being implemented. We understand. We went round, we campaigned, we heard from the people, we have connections, we have the feelers on the ground. We are able to hear from what the people are saying, and we bring it to you. Now, I don't have to be a political scientist to be a political advisor to the governor. If I have played in the politics of the county very well, I've got my feelers, I'm a person on the ground, I qualify to be a political advisor to the governor. Am I bringing value? You may not be able to see the output, but you will see the outcome.
Well, you see, and you've rightly described, there are those individuals that some of them may be pointed as advisors, political advisors, say after one wins office. Huh? And for them, it's just a question of ensuring that the person in office keeps abreast of how the ground is, pulsating, in the county, etc. But if we look at it in the objective, real sense of, say, technical advisors, they are supposed to be the compass for the leader in office, to be the persons that lead whether it's the president or governor, onto that narrow path of compliance when it comes, for example, to matters policy and legislation, or even propose the requisite or desired policies upon review of various policies and statutes that need to be formulated for purposes of good governance that will promise good service delivery for the leader that is occupying the said office.
So it has to be technical.
Well, I use
So,
technical
for
here.
example, we can say Mwai Kibaki's administration, he had advisors.
Yes.
The National Social and Economic Council, a formal body that is advising him on social issues and economic issues. And then with that, they are coming up with a formulation of policies going into Vision 2030 and all.
Yes.
But we also know that Mwai Kibaki had what we call a kitchen cabinet. kitchen cabinet are those advisors that we're talking about. The people who will tell you the truth when you're just chilling and you're relaxed and they tell you, boss. Those people are not sycophants. They are true friends. That's what they are. They'll
Well-
defend you when you're being attacked. But also, on the side, they'll tell you, this is the truth.
Well, we have got something we call political guardianship. And such individuals that you're describing as kitchen cabinet, they are the protectors of the kingdom, the guardians of the kingdom, all right? And for them, their role, they know, is to protect the interests of that administration, protect the persona of that administration, and make sure that the interests, because they're there to serve certain interests, they may not have the depth of expertise in certain issues, or some of them may. But some of them also act as the political conscience of the person in office. This conscience at times is functional or otherwise. Because some of these guardians of your power are persons that may not necessarily drive you to the broader interests of the country that you should serve, but to secure certain narrow interests for your own greater good and survival. And that's what they do. While the other technical persons, for them, is to make sure that the mandate that you have, you deliver, for example, on certain policy issues that you committed. Now, if you come to have a leader who listens to both sides or creates some kind of equilibrium, then such kind of leader may come across as quite measured, well-meaning, and at least to a great extent deliver. They'll be seen as experts in the politics and then also delivering on services.
The leaders that we have, if we can circle back and say, looking at the Kenyan situation right now, the leaders who are measured, as you say, the leaders who have been able to tick off certain boxes in terms of what they've been able to do in their area, at whatever level, is it because of the content of their character? Or is it because of these would-be advice that they have been given by those who surround them?
I would say both. And if we are to have a leader that appreciates the equipoise of advice that they receive and also the durable content of their character, then we get to see a leader that is pleasant to look at, to listen to, and also good at delivery. For instance, here in Kenya, since the Constitution of Kenya 2010. At the first time, remember when we wanted to fill the office of the Chief Justice, we had Mwai Kibaki trying to do things the old way, but he was stopped and he had to comply. Various decisions, for example, even in our courts, are decisions that have informed jurisprudence on matters governance. For example, case in point is petition number 229 of 2012, the Mumo Matemo case, on issues to do with good governance, integrity of a person occupying public office. Look at the decision of Mumbi Ngugi, for example, in the Moses Lenolukulal case, right? And how she guided, by way of her decision, that a leader who is in such office as governor and is indicted and is facing active trial should vacate office or should step aside so that they do not interfere with the investigations or the manner in which the inquiry is being conducted or being tried. Then we come to appreciate that, if, for example, if you have an advisor who tells you that if you're to make this kind of appointment or move on this path, you need to be guided by the reflections of our durable history of the decisions made by the courts. For example, in the case of Moses Lenolukulal, or the Mumo Matemo case, for example, etc. And then you get to realize that actually you are likely to go to court, to be taken to court, because the path already speaks, of such kind of trials having been instituted before. So if you do not have an advisor that has got the depth and a technical person who appreciates, for example, such kind of even jurisprudential history, they will not tell you that, for example, there has been this case 1, case 2, case 3.
But you see,
And that's why I said that a balance.
those offices have been created to serve you and give you all that information. Okay? There's a county attorney who's like the county AG
Yes.
That is a person who has the technical expertise on all those matters you're talking about. If it's about law, it's about the legal direction that you're taking, the loopholes, the things that you should avoid. The county attorney has the duty to advise the governor on such matters. The governor does not have to go and pay some lawyer called Javas Bigambo to come and tell him what the county attorney should be telling him. In fact, my argument would be these technical guys are the ones who are just eating money. These other political advisors are what you need to have as a governor.
Okay, let me then ask you.
You get all those who are giving you the other feel of the ground because you have people in office who are supposed to serve public interests. You have a county attorney, you've got all the CECs, you've got all the chief officers, you've got the technical people, you've got the directors of the various departments in your county. All those people are giving you the technical advice that you require.
Now, I will take you to a period, I think, around December 2020, when former Nairobi Governor Sonko was impeached. And you remember the various grounds of impeachment. You remember that it's upon or on the basis of Article 181 of the Constitution, as well as Section 33 of the County Government Act, violation of the Public Procurement and Disposal Act, violation of the principles of public finance as provided for as well in the Public Finance Management Act. When all this was being done, when he had to award, for example, contracts or favor the award of contracts to certain companies, did he not have the county attorney in office? Didn't he have CCs in office and chief officers?
He did.
Thank you. So my whole point is this, that beyond...
Do we know for sure that he did not have a technical advisor on legal matters?
Well, with that we can establish. It's something we can establish. But what I'm saying is that having persons in office that you have appointed as CECs may not necessarily mean that they will serve to give you the critical technical advice that you need. And that's why having those persons, the CECs in office, the county attorney in office, and then having these other advisors that now you get to appoint or to retain, helps you to have a wealth of, or that slate of advisors and knowledge and information may help you to make critical decisions, if at all you're a person of appreciative sound mind.
You know, we're discussing politicians here.
Yes.
By which moral code or by which... well, yes, we have to go there, mustn't we?
Yes.
By which moral code and by which standard, accepted international standard of behavior, or by which ethos do we hold them to? How do we hold them accountable? What is it that we look for? Because you can have a governor who is educated, has academic qualifications, has even undertaken these governance courses, take that particular box. You look at their background, the people who even had very senior positions in reputable organizations. So the issue of them understanding what needs to be done, no doubt whatsoever. Then they become governor. And lo and behold, we think everything is fine until the Auditor General comes and gives you a report. We think everything is fine until the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission comes and gives you a report.
Look, in this country, sadly so, we don't take governance seriously. We don't take ethics seriously, especially in the political sphere. We don't take it seriously. Now, look, I'll give you these examples. The courts, on their part, have made various decisions that have tried to strengthen matters of integrity, leadership, good governance.
So they take it seriously.
The courts.
Yes, the courts.
And that's why I said, in the political sphere, we don't.
What about those who actually are responsible for enacting our laws? Do they take it seriously?
There is this parlance or lexicon or politics. We always say that there is no political goodwill. All right? And we leave it at that. We always say there is no political goodwill to ensure that there is serious integrity, leadership, and good governance and the rule of law in this country. For instance, if at all we were to be serious about good governance and the rule of law, this Jubilee administration, especially from 2017, let me go back to 2013, how many court decisions have been ignored by this Jubilee administration? Many. Yet, we have got right from the president in office, who swore to protect the Constitution. When you look at Article 10, Article 2 of the Constitution, enumerates the values of good governance, and we know all of them, and one among them is the rule of law. Then which law are they protecting? And how many of us look at the president in the eye and say, Mr. President, you're breaking the law? We fear.
Why do we fear?
Most people develop cold feet when it comes to calling every sin by its name, especially with respect to political leaders. And that's our Achilles heel.
But Javas, is there universal concurrence that the president has been breaking the law and ignoring court orders?
Now, court orders are there to be implemented. The courts don't implement their orders.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
Enforcement of court orders or decrees is something that the executive plays a critical role.
Yes.
When that role is not played by the executive, right? And then we do not actually strongly speak against it. In fact, we seem to be at home with that. Are we not celebrating the contempt of courts? We are. We are celebrating the contempt of court.
That's what I'm asking, whether
Yes.
there is actually universal concurrence that there is contempt of court.
To the extent that court decrees and the implementation is ignored flagrantly by those that are in office, executive office, we do not need to have a conference to agree that actually there's contempt of court. It follows that there is contempt of court.
You know, when you talk about content of court, you are talking about the legal structure, the legal understanding. But the bigger question is this. I've heard people calling on the public to rise up and show their contempt for this contempt that is being shown to court orders and so forth. And therein lies the crux of the matter. Do you really think that, for instance, when it is said that the president has disobeyed a court order, that there's concurrence in that he has actually disobeyed a court order?
When it comes to
I'm talking about public concurrence.
yes, when it comes to cosmic moral law, we come to agreement.
Cosmic.
Yeah. Let me finish this statement.
Intergalactic.
Right. Such
Okay.
things.
Yeah.
Carry on.
That the place of conscience, yeah, is very significant in terms of decisions and acts and even omissions
All right.
of person in high office. That's what we call, we have come to the legitimate expectation that we do have of you as president or you as cabinet secretary.
Are you being prophetic here?
Yes.
No, not quite.
And then you breaking court
Well, I do
orders.
not know whether he's entertaining.
I thought. No, I'm not. Carry on, please.
He's listening to the ground.
He's listening to the ground. So, I think the failure of governance, good governance to that extent, for that matter, in this country, is because we are not ready, whether individually or collectively, to hold a candle to those in office. We are not willing to call them out for their failures or limitations by way of the mandate that they have or they're executing because of the laws that they are in place. The
Is it the
Constitution
laws?
says-
Is it the laws, my brother, or is it our poverty? Because what prevents us? Is it that we are so poor that we can't even think beyond what is going to serve our interests on a daily basis?
Today.
Now you see,
become cows.
and you're a scholar,
And we are cows,
you know,
livestock.
when you examine or titrate the content of Why Nations Fail by Simoglu and Robinson, we know that nations don't just fail because of lack or absence of laws and weak policies. No. One, the issue that she talked about, the content of the character of the person occupying an office, the neglect of the implementation of laws, the neglect of implementation of court decrees, having in place policies that you know actually you do not have the will and the spirit to implement. And in fact, you sit under a tree and take water when that failure is manifest, is some of the things that lead to the failure of nations. When the Galana Kulalu project failed, having consumed billions upon billions of taxpayers' money, have we demonstrated our anger and pain at sinking such money through such project?
You know,
We haven't.
that's why I'm asking the question, because I'm bypassing all these discussions and arguments that we often have in the academic realm, and I'm asking, okay, we are poor. A large majority of the citizens of this country are poor, meaning they can't afford the next meal. They can't even think of how to afford the next meal. So what is going to occupy their mind?
What is the causal root of that poverty?
You see,
Just the same way they say the gods are not to blame. I think
agree.
poverty is not to blame.
Poverty.
Is it?
Poverty is
No.
at the heart of the way we do things.
I know, but you see, when it comes to what the president needs to do while in office, you can't blame poverty.
It is what causes poverty.
Yes.
The failure by that president.
The failure of
Or
by
it,
that,
it exacerbates the poverty that we have.
no, actually, it is. We know it. It's intentional. When
We do.
when the poverty levels are kept at an all-time high, they know, the politicians in high office, they know that now they've got the masses on the short leash, and that's what they want.
And so they can then proceed to do whatever they wish because they know that these folks are beholden to them.
Is that,
And they also know that you thirst for handouts.
is that an understanding or a
No.
lack of understanding? Because the result of that was demonstrated well with the French Revolution. It was demonstrated with the Russian Revolution. The very thing that you're describing, you exacerbated. What do you think? You think you have them on a short leash? You don't.
End of the
Actually-
chapter. It'll come to a point where
Yes.
they'll
There'll
be
be
like,
no rope left."
okay,
Yes.
You
finished.
see,
They're right
you
here
have
with
them
you.
on a short leash, but of course it's not eternally. All right? To the extent that they realize now that short leash is the leash of death, then now the revolution comes.
Bas.
Okay.
Javas, thank you for coming today. We'll talk about why you eat public money as a governance expert,
No,
and yet we have people that we are paying in those offices.
I don't eat. The quest for services that
You don't eat.
Seeking to end
he
poverty.
offers services
And then
that
he's
people
paid.
have a choice to either take or not
leave.
take.
Yes.
And in most cases, they take.
And when they take, he eats the money.
And when they take, they win elections. Yes.
That's one.
Okay.
And secondly, in closing,
That's
the reason for which you went to school and then gathered experience,
Yes.
that reason must be paid for.
All right.
Oh, okay.